All right. I can't believe it myself, Mark, but
It's already that time.
dude, you know what's weird?
Mm.
You pulled that thought right out of my head, right out the gates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I
I
don't
knew
know.
where you were going with it. I knew where you were going with it, man. I knew where you were going because I can't believe it either. I mean, a week just whipped by like 7 days.
It's like every time we do one of these things, a whole week has passed, and I'm not putting two and two together,
Uh,
but it's like some sort of it has something to do with like like time, and I don't know what that's all about, but
no, I don't think anybody does. Does anybody really know what time it is? Does
yeah,
anybody really care?
I'm not gonna do the horn. I'm not gonna play the horn section.
Oh, come on. But good pickup. Good pickup. Chicago, a golden flashback to the summer of 69 before you were born. Remember, kids?
Oh boy,
Jeez.
there is some things that are. I see. I don't want to. That's not where I was intending to go, but you brought up Chicago, and I just want to say one thing about Chicago.
Okay.
The city, I was there, and it was a fun. It's cold as hell.
Mhm.
Um, the band, just this is one thing, just a little nugget
Mhm.
here. I don't want to scare off the non-Chicago or music in general fans. Um, Chicago, the band in the '80s that people didn't like much, as far as the rock and heavy rock and rollers, I liked. I liked.
I had to
There,
love
I said it. I
I had
said
a
it.
I had a love-hate relationship with Chicago, and I have a very direct opinion. You know, some of my opinions on musicians and groups and stuff like
Mhm.
that.
The Bee Gees.
I have a very simple but very direct opinion. And the problem with it is it's very abrupt and people don't like to hear it. But personally, I believe that the band Chicago died with Terry Kath. There, I said it. I mean, you go back and you listen to Chicago Transit Authority, you listen to the first couple albums, and I mean, they were good, good albums. But after that, they became syrupy love songs. You know, Peter Cetera always nailed the vocals. Terry Kath was right in there with them. But I mean, you listen to like 25 or 64 or I'm a Man. And I
Mhm.
mean, that was kick ass music. But then they started, you know, after Terry was gone, they just kind of
Excuse me.
went down that slope into easy listening and became nothing but love songs. And they lost me.
Well, I understand that. I can appreciate that. I don't partake in your assessment as far. Well, I
Sure.
mean, I partake in your assessment is correct that that's what happened,
Mm-hmm.
but my preference is that I'm okay with obviously the early
Mm-hmm.
era, which was wildly musically sort of like beyond the scope of what you would imagine, and I appreciate the pop ballad era very much. I love the fact that into they transitioned into what they did, adapting with the times. And you know, I'm a big fan of
You know, I,
those
I
ballads.
I never really thought about it in those respects, in that maybe they adapted with the times. I don't know, but I do know that the first couple albums were very experimental.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've spent some time talking about how experimental the Beatles were and the Beach Boys. I think
Mhm.
Chicago was just as experimental. They didn't get the press because a lot of people had come before them,
Mhm.
but they were very experimental and not afraid to push it. I mean,
Mhm.
when you drop the needle on the album, you start listening to I'm a Man. I mean, they add 10 elements in the first 60 seconds of the song before the first word is ever sung. I mean,
And
it's
they do it
just,
in a beautiful way
and
too.
it fits. And you just go, okay, what's coming up next? Okay, what's coming up next? Okay, what's coming in next? And then they traded off the vocals amongst the three singers,
Mhm.
and the horns stayed very tasteful back in the background. Then they came in when they needed to, and it was just excellent music, excellent music.
Yeah.
And it was just stuff that wasn't there. It wasn't out there. It wasn't cliched. It was very experimental for its time, and I loved it. But
Very good.
it started to sound the same, man. It all just kind of went away after Terry Kath passed away.
I mean, so you're trying to tell me that the stuff in the 80s, the ballads that they sung, the heartfelt love ballads, didn't tug a little bit at your heartstrings? Because it did me, even back then.
I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy them. What I'm saying is it's not the kind of music that I sought out. I wasn't looking for it. If it came on, maybe I'd change the channel, maybe I wouldn't. But it all started to sound the same.
Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't play that around. Like, let's say we're hanging out with buddies. Hey guys, let's drop the needle on this brand new 1984 release of Chicago. No, we would not do that. But like, you'd have your personal music stash that was eclectic more so than what your buddies would tolerate. And this wasn't like written in stone stuff, but it was kind of like a known thing. You don't play like Josie and the Pussycat. You don't. There's certain things you don't.
that opens up a whole different topic, which I'm sure you didn't want to get into, because, and believe me, guys, this did not start out to be a music show. It's just kind of evolved. Okay. With that being said, were there any? And I hate the phrase, but let's say it. Were there any guilty pleasures musically that you had? That stuff that you would go out of your way to make sure your friends didn't know you would actually listen to and go, hey, this is pretty bitchin',
Well, there were, but I can't quite bring them out of the locker room in my head. I can't quite remember, but I'm sure that I've told you before, but Poison was a band that I would listen to because of the hit. I liked, that pop. Okay, I'll say it like this. AC/DC. We all love AC/DC. Nobody can argue that across the world, from here to Timbuktu, to the Himalayas, down to Ecuadorial, nobody can argue AC/DC. It's impossible to do legally. Well, there's a rock and roll of it, pop. See, I'm gonna say it like that. It's sort of like a driving, on the roadside, sort of like, nice. And sure, they're the heavy exception of that, but there's all these anthems, like, rock songs that are like packaged neatly. Well, every band in the 80s had at least one little anthem packaged sort of rock, sort of within the vein of maybe not like the, wonderful AC, but had some of that. And so, Poison had a couple of those, which I would totally dig. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, but that's still more in line with your style of music. In fact, the first time you said you didn't really care for Poison, that was one of those bands that everybody just went, what? That kind of surprised me, because it's still in that genre. It's still in that hair metal genre.
No, but the Bret Michaels guy.
Yeah, I get it. I get it now. You had to explain it to me.
Yeah. And like, it's something you couldn't wear a T-shirt for. I mean, you wouldn't want to, and nor did I ever want to. Now I did, but I did stay awake at night wanting some Metallica shirts, Anthrax and such, that stuff. But you would probably steer away from certain, Cinderella shirt,
It's hard for me to go back that far, because I was brought up on a lot of this stuff. So a lot of the things that I listened to that a lot of people would say was kind of goofy was stuff that my parents listened to. But when I was, in my progressive rock stage, and progressive rock and blues, which I never really got out of. I'm still into it. What can I tell you? I started getting an appreciation for, believe it or not, Glenn Campbell and Roy Clark. You talk about two, but it all came back down to their guitar skills. Glenn Campbell was always seen as this country bumpkin, but that man could just flat out play. And Roy Clark is just a legend. I mean, absolute legend with the sixth string. And that's all there is to it. One of the best guitarists to ever pick one up. And I'll fight to the death on that one, you know. But those were kind of guilty pleasures to me. I'm sitting here listening to, oh gosh, King Crimson, and then all of a sudden I just reach over, yeah, to hell with it. Boom, like a rhinestone cowboy. Just, you know, going off the deep end.
That's a good, yeah. I like, you know, listening to a certain, well, so, but before I would do like a album, and then the next album could be something different, but it would be
Right.
From album to album. I would listen to a certain album the whole way through. I literally, I
Same
think
here.
most of us literally did. We wouldn't go and pick one song and then pull the cassette and then go to the other one and pick one song. We do mixtapes.
Now I would make mixtapes, yes.
Yeah.
You know, 3-4 songs off of one album that I wanted to play for certain, you know, I'm going to go on a road trip or something like that. I got to get these in here. But, you know, it's funny, and thinking back about it, most of the mixtapes I made were going for the deeper cuts off of an album that you didn't hear on the radio to get my friends to listen to them. You know, so we're cruising down the highway going to Oakland or something like that, listening to nothing but deep cuts on this one cassette. You know, that was part of my entertainment, was just getting their reaction to this tune that they had never heard before. You know,
I was into, that was different from my friends. I was into deeply the blues and the idea of the blues. And I think, thinking back on it now, I think the reason I got into the blues now, thinking about it, could have been through the Doors, because Jim Morrison was a proponent of the blues, and he did that.
Oh yeah, big time
songs. And it led me to go look for John Lee Hooker and all these people, and I did. And I would play this old stuff, and when you hear this old stuff, it's just like this guy with the guitar and what we know, and sometimes the recordings aren't that great. And I liked the rawness of it, but I don't know that my contemporary friends at the time were, because what had been happening was that it was, you know, the hair metal, and then into the grunge, which was like, you know, whatever it was, and it wasn't what was popular,
right?
But I was listening to it and thinking in my mind that, yeah, this is the stuff, you know, this is the, sure, the other stuff's all right, but I like this as well, you know, and I'm gonna, but you know, it, you know how you're always saying you're what's the word, a cultural infidel?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit, I don't know, that's the closest thing I could think about. There's a little dab of that in me as well, in that I don't want to call it that, like, you know, connect you to it, but I'll say like a stubbornness for me, to go against to notice that, oh, everybody's going for this because it's being promoted as such. That's so lame. People are rushing to it like cattle, because that's like being promoted, but this stuff is being neglected over here. I'm gonna go check this out while you jokers are doing all that. There was a little bit of that in my mind back then as well, like, hey, how about this stuff over here? Why is everybody rushing over there? Which is silliness, but I'm just that's just what I would discover different things.
I don't know if it's silliness as much as it is, you know what you like. I mean, I came upon a few bands late in their career because I just basically wasn't exposed to them, because I was off in my own little world. It didn't mean I didn't like their music. Like, I didn't discover Molly Hatchet until, like, 10 years after they had basically kind of gone by the wayside. And then I went back and started listening to their older stuff, and I'm like, dang, this is cool. This is good stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But it wasn't because I didn't like that style of music or anything. It's just because I was following something else. There was a little bit of that rebellion in there, in that I don't want to follow the trend. But then again, some trends are trendy because they're actually good.
Yeah, right. You can't automatically discount because it's popular, it's like icky poo.
Well, yeah.
I'm not touching that with
Well,
you can't do that either. But there is a rush, a bum rush to the through the gates when something is marketed, obviously, because it works.
Right.
You know, and
the Beatles are a perfect example of that. Everybody, I mean, people who weren't alive back then, and I was barely alive back then. I mean, I was 2 or 3 years old, maybe 4 during this time. People don't realize just how big Beatlemania actually was. I mean, it was a phenomenon. It was a movement that captured the entire country. You either loved it or you hated it, but you weren't on the fence about it. And you've read the biographies. What was it at one time? 8 of the top 10 selling singles were Beatles singles.
Yeah.
You know, and we're not talking about that happened once. We're talking about that happened for months at a time. I mean, Beatlemania was just absolutely bananas. And so that trend was towards something good. You know, to me, my personal taste, the trend and the rush towards disco, to me, I'll still say it was a dark time in American music history. There were some good bands that came out of that. There were some people that got attention out of that. But the music style just wasn't for me. You know, you look at a band like the Atlanta Rhythm Sections, they didn't really do any disco stuff, but they got dangerously close, just close enough to get some attention. And then they pulled back and did what they did normally. And they were an excellent group.
Yeah.
You know, so the rush to grab hold and follow a trend to me just seemed like kind of sort of what you said. It's, you know, that cattle mentality. It's 1975. We must do this. It's 1980. We must do that. Well, baloney, you know, everybody's got their own personal taste. You either like it or you don't like it. And there's nothing any radio DJ can tell you that's going to make you think otherwise. Yeah. Unless you're already that of that mindset, you know.
Well, yeah, it's like my buddy when he said, "Oh, you should get Bon Jovi," or was it that? Yeah, he told. Actually, I never told you this part. The initial thing was that he had said, "Dude, you gotta go get Bon Jovi," and I said, "Yeah, are they good?" I was a kid with like money that I had enough to purchase, you know, because I was given them when I was a little kid. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and so then after a time, I went and bought it. I opened it up and got on the bike with my little Walkman, started biking. I clicked on the thing and I'm biking down the frickin' road. I know exactly where I was biking, and I hear the first few frickin' phrases of Bon Jovi's Slippery When I started.
I spent money on this.
I was crying, dude, and I went to my friend and I was in tears. And he put his hand on my he puts his hand on my shoes. Dude, what's wrong, man? I said, this sucks. He says, no, they're good. I said, no, they're not. You
know. They did a couple of tunes that I kind of liked when I first heard Wanted Dead or Alive. I kind of liked it. I mean, I didn't rush out and buy any albums or anything like that, but if it came on, I wouldn't turn it off.
Oh, no. After that, I listened to it because you said that the other in the other episode, something to the effect of, you know, well, what kind of taste do you have as a kid? Something to that effect. What kind of, you know, for life in general, what are your, what do you know about what you like and you don't like? You don't know because you've not experienced anything to know what you don't like or do like.
Well, when we're that age, we're sponges. We take everything in, but we're also of the mentality that things have to be pounded into us before we actually decide whether we like it or not. You know, there are songs that you don't like that you know the words to because it's been driven into your skull so many damn times because you couldn't get away from it for one reason or another, you know. And I'm the same way. You know, it's just that the songs that I got pounded into my head were, you know, from an earlier era. So, I mean, and believe me, disco was not the only dark time. I mean, the bubblegum pop of the 60s was syrupy, sweet, and sickening. until Woodstock came along, and then that kind of just shoved it out of the way.
I'll give you a guilty song that just popped into my head when you had mentioned that. That I will listen to and enjoy. Last Chance, Romance Tonight. I like the melodic. I like the,
I'm trying to think of her. I'm trying to think of her name. I've heard the song, and I'm trying to think of her name. And the girl can sing. No, Donna Summer. The girl can sing. She's got a voice. It just was not my style of music, man. It was not my style of music.
But okay, so yeah, it is. Look, there's this. Since you're a cultural infidel,
mm-hmm.
I know that you haven't watched, or chances are you've not watched, the Walking Dead series.
No, not interested.
Okay. And by the way, one of the biggest horror film fanatics out there is Overhead Cam. That's Greg over in Canada, just to let you know. He's into totally the vampire movies, everything. He can't get enough of that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, in any of it, there's an episode within that whole 7-season thing.
Yeah.
It's good in the first seasons. It's good, the survival stuff or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they capture a guy, because this is like a dystopian world after the fact. Society has crumbled. You're on your own. Let's buddy up. We'll have little tribes. We'll steal resources from each other and all that good stuff. Meanwhile, you have zombies in between all that. And everything's overgrown with vegetation and such. And, so it's interesting. So they capture a guy, one of the stars, the protagonist, and they want him in their tribe, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not trainable. So they put him in this dank cell, strip him down, right, into his birthday suit, and they have these little speakers that are not equalized for decent balanced. They're just those crappy, probably World War II frickin' concentration camp frickin' crap speaker. And they play this one song over and over again for days and days and days and days and days. And they show the way that they filmed it. The guy, they'll show him sleeping and it'll turn on. And it's crazy. It's a decent song on its own. And it's a happy song. But when you repeat said song in that confined area, it will drive you frickin' wacko.
That's the kind of stuff that they did to get Noriega to come out of that embassy down in Panama.
Is that what?
Yeah. One of Linda's friends, little side note here, one of Linda's friends down in Nevada, her husband was on that PSYOPs team that set up that sound system and did it. And that's the first time they did it in a real life situation. He was one of the people that set it up and was jamming the music.
It was effective, apparently.
It took a few days, but it was effective.
Well, because that sonic angle to torture is seldom, you may not physically, be bruised and battered, but the mental stress will kick your royal butt.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So I could totally see that being, just loud sounds to me are annoying as hell.
Well, it depends on what it is. There are certain things I want to turn up and there are other things I want to turn down, but yeah, it just depends on what it is. Yeah.
My dad I'd bring home the most heavy freaking rock, and I had like these tall towering speakers in my room and our floors are wood. And it transitions underneath the wall that divides both rooms, which the other room is on the other side, but it's literally right there anyhow. And I would drop the needle. It was a record too. And I'd be chin, 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 chin. And I'd be playing for like, let's say 10 minutes. And my dad would storm through the door. You could tell for me, it was instant but for him, he was probably in his bed rolling around. Stop it! Stop it! And I did that
Well,
for a lot, many times.
my dad worked graveyard for most of my life anyway, his career, and all of his career just about. So he always made sure we had headphones available. And we do anything we wanted with headphones except sing. And I don't know, what is it about headphones that make people think they can sing?
Because they can't hear themselves.
That's got to be what it is. I'm pretty good when I've got headphones on. I'm real good.
Yeah, the whole noise thing, and volume, it is what it is. Everybody likes their own noise.
Yeah.
It's the other person's noise that is not,
I mean, I got a next door neighbor and he puts on his music, and he's from Mexico. And so he'll put on his music. They'll be out on the front porch barbecuing something or what have you. And he'll put it on and it'll get a little bit loud. And I can hear the bass through the wall because it's literally, maybe 4 feet. Yeah.
next to you.
3 feet is the outside wall. And off to my right, about 3 feet is the wall. And so the bass travels. And you know how it is. Normally with headphones on, I can't hear it. But every once in a while, after más cervezas, it'll start getting a little bit loud. But after usually about a half an hour, it shuts off. And then they're in the house doing whatever it is they do. So I'm fine with that.
So, there's a time. There's a time, but not in this case over here.
I've never had to speak with him. I've never had to speak with him about it. There's been a couple of times I've wanted to turn up my music, but I figure, live and let live, let him go, and then within a few minutes it's done.
Yeah.
But to go back to your original point about AC/DC, I do live by that motto. I don't always listen to AC/DC, but when I do, so do my neighbors.
Yeah, you can't play AC/DC necessarily low. I mean, you could, but it's sort of the thing where you want to crank it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yep. That first dun, 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 these go to 11.
Heck yeah. I mean, and by the way, they came out with another album and it's freaking awesome. If you listen to it, you can hear the whole thing online. On YouTube, and it's freaking awesome. The whole thing, and they sound like they
used to,
like they used to totally. Like there's no, it's brand new hits.
Yep.
So,
well, we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know if they're going to tour for the album. I mean, I guess they're playing a few live dates, but we shall see. I mean, the doctors years ago told Brian Johnson that he had two choices: he could continue to tour, or he could keep his hearing. But I guess he's been working with some researchers and some doctors to where they might have some sort of a thing figured out for him so that he can tour. And I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, but you got to think about it. They're all in their 70s. So it's kind of like, get it done while you can, man, because other than Keith Richards and Mick Jagger, we're not all here forever, I mean,
this will probably be the first generation that they'll be rocking well into their 80s or 90s.
I mean, it's possible when you stop and think about it. I mean, everybody we listen to, I mean, I turn 60 next month. Everybody I listened to growing up was 18 to 20 years older than me.
And they're still rocking.
Yeah, a lot of them are. I mean, wow. I mean, Paul McCartney's still out there doing it, still touring, not very much, but he's still touring.
I thought back in the early 2000s, and he was coming out with an album, and the album, by the way, was one of my favorites of these later years. Although, honestly, he's done a few that I've really loved, and a few that I'm like, eh.
Yeah.
But a few of them that I've really loved, literally. One was the one that I went to see that concert. I had to go and buy tickets because I thought, man, this is not the probability is. And since that time, he's done like 10 concerts or tours.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow,
Yeah.
I thought that, well, this is the last. Same with Eric Clapton. He was coming round,
But
and I said, I better catch this while I can. But he keeps on rocking.
yeah, I mean, well, heck, BB King played well into his 80s.
Yeah.
He was still touring.
He was from
Playing
the
gigs.
30s and 40s, that guy. He
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
Or at least he was born in that time period.
Yeah. So, I mean,
but
it's just wild that, I mean, these guys are, you would think, I mean, these are senior citizens. These guys are in their 70s. Aren't they ever going to slow down? They keep filling up arenas. They keep filling them up. They keep playing to sold out audiences.
It's an amazing
that
thing.
Speaks for itself. So.
The album I'm trying to think of, there was one called Chaos and Creation in the Backyard by Paul McCartney, and that was a very excellent. Any Beatles fan would listen to it. You'd have to be especially geared towards it, but he created an album that was very unique. And what he did with it was he brought a lot of imagery into it. And some of it is not like high profile songs, but there's something beautiful about that album. And along with it, he went to Abbey Road and brought all the old equipment, and on his own used the equipment. It was Chaos and Creation in the studio or something like that. And he played it for the audience, doing that, and used Elvis's old bass, and he recorded his own stuff. And it was a beautiful addition to the album. So that was a good little pack. That was an awesome job on his part with that one. Yeah.
I've not heard it, but I'll check it out.
You've not seen on YouTube the videos of Chaos and Creation at Abbey Road. I think it's Chaos and Creation at Abbey Road.
Well, you can put it over on the Facebook page, and I'll be sure to check it out.
It's actually very entertaining for music lovers that like the Beatles.
Okay. Yeah. If you could link it over to the Facebook page, I'll make sure to check it out.
I will do.
And that's kind of a great segue into a topic that I had because it's a video that I was going to put over on the Trampled Underfoot Podcast Facebook page. Go to Facebook, look for Trampled Underfoot Podcast. That's us. You'll find these links to these videos that we're talking about now. Did you hear about, or did you know about? Now, you got more heavy into biographies of musicians than I did. And I know you're a major Hendrix fan. Did you ever hear about or know why Hendrix got banned from the BBC? Or did you know that he was banned from the BBC over in the UK?
He did Radio 1. BBC One, and they recorded it, and after his death back in the early 2000s or something like that, they put out, or 1990s, they put out an album of his BBC sessions and stuff. I can't remember. I just remember that I owned that album, but I can't remember right now.
Well, he did a television show. It was live TV, and it was hosted by a woman called Lulu. She was a bigger star in the UK than she ever was over here. Over here, she had one hit. I think it was called "To Sir with Love" or something like that in the 60s. And she had her own TV show. It was a variety show on BBC television. And this was while Hendrix was over there. He was in the UK for quite some time.
Yeah.
And they had him on the show. He was supposed to do his two brand new tunes.
I remember now I know exactly where you're going, but continue.
Hey Joe and Voodoo Child. Well, earlier that day, Jack Bruce announced that Cream had split up, that Eric Clapton was leaving Cream.
Yeah.
So he got about 2/3 of the way through. He had already played Voodoo Child, and he was the end piece. They were going to, he was going to play Hey Joe, and then Lulu was going to transition out, close off the show, and BBC News was next.
Hey Joe, no, Hey Joe. It was gonna be Hey Joe and Purple Haze is what he was gonna do.
Okay, well, the article I've got here says it was Voodoo Child. They were to open up the set with Voodoo Child and then play Hey Joe.
Because the video
with Lulu joining in with Hendrix on stage to sing the final bars with him before they segued into the closing number.
Because the video, you can find that video of what the whole thing you're gonna say.
You can find most of it.
No, you can find the video let me just say.
I'm getting to that story. That video's been taken down.
Oh, okay, but
you can find most of it.
Okay, so when he does what he does, he was in the middle of or the beginning of Purple Haze, and he stopped in the midst of that.
Right. Which was totally unscripted. It was totally, completely unscripted. They didn't know what the hell he was doing.
Okay, I don't want to ruin but it's just that this is a blowing out. Go ahead.
And he wanted to do a tribute to Cream because they had just broken up. So they started the opening bars of Sunshine of Your Love and went on with that. And he wouldn't stop. And he wouldn't stop. And they're trying to signal to him to stop, end it. And the camera keeps panning around to her and then back up to him and then down to her. And you can see how uncomfortable she is about this entire damn thing. Now, that footage was almost lost completely because it was BBC's policy to hold on to it for 1 year, hold on to a tape for 1 year, and then erase it and reuse the tapes. Well, it kind of got shoehorned and stuck back in a corner, and pretty soon there were piles and piles and piles of tapes. And one guy was given the task to go through all these tapes and see what the heck is on these. And if it's anything worthwhile, bring it to our attention. If it's not worthwhile, erase it and get rid of it. He found that show, shoved it in his briefcase, and took it home with him. Well, there is a guy on YouTube who calls himself the Hendrix Collector. He has that entire tape. And he has put that video up on YouTube 4 times. And each time the Hendrix family copyright strikes him. He's had 3 or 4 different YouTube accounts. So he keeps trying to put it back up. What they did was they allowed him to put the one up that's up there now. And this is what I'm going to link to the Trampled Underfoot Podcast Facebook page. It is a video. It's about 6 minutes long. Talking about this entire subject and how it came to be that this guy ended up in possession of this tape. And how he keeps trying to put it up and it keeps getting taken down. Because the Hendrix family doesn't want it seen. And that's all there is to it. So they've agreed to let this one stay up, but that's all. So basically what I'm getting at is the tape is still out there. But the blowback from that episode, Noel Redding, you know Noel Redding, right? His bassist. Mm-hmm. When he said Jimmy came up with the idea of not even finishing Hey Joe simply because everybody cringed that Lulu wanted to come up and sing the final bars with him. And so they just kind of panicked, and that's what they ended up doing.
Gotcha.
So, he says here, the band launched into the song, but midway through, before Lulu had a chance to join him on stage, Hendrix signaled to everybody else to stop playing. And he said, we'd like to stop playing this rubbish and dedicate a song to the Cream, regardless of what kind of group they may be in. We dedicate this to Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker, and Jack Bruce. And they went off into an instrumental version of Sunshine of Your Love. Yep. Well, that didn't sit very well with the bigwigs at the BBC. And they right then and there permanently, because they went over and the news came on late because it was live television. They couldn't cut away from him. So they basically they banned him from the entire BBC, radio, TV, everything.
Because
And it
of
was
that.
because of that event. And it wasn't, but it was like 9 months later he came back to the States, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Okay, so I remember watching that many times on YouTube, many times throughout the years.
Yeah.
And the way I remember it in actual my memory is that first they played Hey Jude, and then they go to the next song, and he starts with bat 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 bat, which is the intro to Purple Haze.
Purple Haze, yeah.
And then they stop. Wait a minute. And he says the rubbish thing, which I remember. And then he says the thing about the Cream breaking, or not breaking up, but in trouble. And I hear that. And then he goes, and we dedicate this, and he goes into Sunshine of Your Love. That's what I remember from the YouTube thing.
Yeah. And like I said, that part of it is in this video. But it was just one of those weird little serendipitous things that they didn't want that to be saved. They wanted it to be erased. But somebody set it aside, just in a little corner. And then stuff started getting packed in front of it. And then pretty soon they had so much stuff that they tasked one guy, just, you go through all these and see if there's anything we're saving.
In fact, just as something that's never spoken, I like to throw in little Easter eggs too. And back in the day, there was this guy called Vince Buffa, or Vince Buffa, better said. And I was a fan of his, still am, great music. And I asked him, "Oh, dude, could I cover your song, this particular song?" It was called Terminator Love, the song. And I just thought it was such a heavy rocking song, simple rocking and all that. And he said, "Sure, man, go ahead." And I recorded it, my version of it, and put out a video of it. But in a little Easter egg within, just that I would only know, or that he would, as a music fan, within our little, thing, I started playing a song in the recording and stopped, and I said, hold on. And I made it so the drums felt like they were crashing. And then I stopped and I said, let's play this instead. And that was me imitating that Hendrix thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm going to look for it, and I'll paste it onto the thing, because I mean it's self-promotional, but that channel doesn't have any,
Hey,
but it does have that. And then I go into his song, my tribute to him, how cool his song was, and so I did my version of his song.
Sweet. Okay, you're gonna put it up on the Facebook page.
Yeah, and it's a heavy song, it's a rocking song. You probably, I think I've shared it with you before.
I think you did once before, yeah, but it's been several years back. So there you go, folks. A Eloy Escagedo original and color and cover.
It's a cover.
Man, what is with me? I can't talk today.
I've been doing the same thing today, though. Have you noticed?
No, I haven't noticed. It's just me. For certain words I've been stumbling over and I don't get it. I'm glad this is your edit.
Yeah, why do you do that always on my edits, man?
Oh, you should hear. Well, you could hear, but you should see what I cut out of when I do the edit. So, well, so that was basically all I had for that, was just that little side thing here, because I ran across that, a couple of weeks back now, but it just has never, been appropriate with what it wasn't even related to what we were talking about, but it's just like, oh, wow, wait a minute, I got to bring this up.
I think it was pretty freaking cool. And so I mean, you'll link it and we'll see what we get from that.
Right. It is from the original BBC tapes. It's called Jimi Hendrix on How the Lulu Show Was Unearthed. And it's in there.
Interesting.
So, cool. I'll put that over on the Trampled Underfoot Podcast Facebook page for your listening pleasure.
Well,
And viewing
a hard left. Yeah, and by the way, we do have a website, and on the website it's called trampledunderfootpodcast.com, and over there you can catch our past episodes, and we have a whole array of different topics, not only podcast wise but intra podcast wise, because within a podcast we go through various different, I mean, we like to do this organically. We didn't necessarily set out to speak about, let's say, Hendrix and stuff, but we cover so much of Americana and history and just music and things that interest us, a whole array of different strange happenings, a whole array of different things. So that's Trample, and you can press the Wayback Machine button, and you can catch all those past episodes there at trampledunderfootpodcast.com. So, yeah.
I'll also mention that, speaking of Easter eggs, you say you like to put Easter eggs in there. I will occasionally throw an Easter egg in a episode that I edit. I'll add sound effects and add little things. Like I did one time, I mentioned you had said a bad word, and I said, "Don't worry about it, I'll bleep it." And then I got it in my brain to do unnecessary censorship. And I just kind of, for the last minute and a half, I just bleeped certain words, and it made it sound dirty when it wasn't,
Yeah.
And so I do little things like that. So if you're watching us live, that's great. Thank you. And we appreciate it. We really appreciate you being here for us. But if you're not listening to the audio side, you're only getting half of the fun.
Isn't beeping the most ineffective, counterproductive process ever?
Yeah, because you can take any sentence at all and you cut out one word and just put a bleep over it, and it sounds worse. It sounds horrible. Yeah, it sounds filthy. Because it sounds like somebody's going to get slapped,
Well, because what happens once you can take any sentence, just like you're saying, and bleep out key words throughout the course of a conversation. And what you've now created is people in their own mind are filling in the blanks, because it's not like you're just going to erase the, synapses in our brains,
right,
that fill in blanks. I mean, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, now, however, well, see, I don't want to go there. Well, I'll go there.
But you could even do that with names. You take my name, Mark Lindsay. If you bleep out the Z and just Mark Lynn beep, it's filthy as heck.
Yeah.
You don't know what was there.
Yeah. You're the one filling in the blank, and it's usually not a nice thing, which says a lot about us, and frankly about the censoring rules. I don't think it's well thought out by any.
It calls attention to it.
It calls attention to it, and people can reason it out. I think that censoring, I understand the functions, that utility, or the intention, this fabric glue of society, and this and that. And I understand, that throughout the decades, the progress of time, things get lax, and some things are acceptable, others no. And I understand that whole thing. But from the I could not, for goodness sakes, they have phallic statues in frickin' Egypt carved into the frickin' limestone. And it's like, dude, they discovered, I wanted to share this with you, and I have a little story, but they discovered, because the other day you told me about Pompeii, and that they had discovered an old eatery. What exactly was a diner?
That wasn't me. I don't remember I don't know what you're talking about. It wasn't me.
It was you that they had uncovered, and they had a counter, and behind it they had their bread making ovens, and they had the charred bread and stuff they had uncovered in Pompeii. I think that was you that had shared that.
It wasn't me. That wasn't me. That sounds interesting as hell, but it wasn't me.
Well, ding ding. Newsflash. That's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, they also, apart from things like that, see, I thought that, who the heck would have told me that then. I mean, I can only imagine you would have said it, Mark. I'm sorry to tell you.
No, it wasn't me, but it sounds interesting as hell.
Are you
Yeah,
certain?
I'm absolutely certain. It doesn't sound familiar at all. Now you
Okay.
let me go back through our private message history here and make sure that I didn't do it in my sleep.
I think, well, I guess my false memory is that you told me about it in a conversation, but in any event, in like fashion, they also uncovered in a wall in Pompeii or its sister city of what is it?
Herculaneum.
Yes, Herculaneum, one of the two. They dusted off a wall and they found some graffiti on it, making fun of like a school teacher or some sort of thing. They added a big nose to it and they called him like some sort of ass hat or some sort of nasty name and stuff. And we're talking frickin' back in the day, beyond back in the day, turn of the frickin' eras, ancient times.
What was it, like 56 BC, 76 BC, something like that?
Yes, in the 70s or earlier. I don't know exact, but within the first 100 years or so of the after Christ.
No, before Christ.
Oh, was it before Christ?
Yeah, it was BC. Yeah.
So Herculaneum. Okay, so there you go. So even back then, these people were doing that. So you can't take this long tradition of the twisted human mind and bleep it out just like that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You take care of that if you don't want see, now I'm being opinionated, but you take care of that with your parents, take care of that, your family structure, this and that. That's not something for like the mass,
Right.
the government to do, in my opinion. All that censoring stuff. But in any event, I found it pretty cool. Are you searching for the actual date?
Yes, I am searching for the actual date. Yes, I am. 79 AD.
Okay. So it was in the
yes, it was.
Okay.
So
because I know Jerusalem burned in 70 AD.
Mm-hmm.
So it happened in that time at the same consecutive with that.
It was buried under 13 to 20 feet of volcanic ash and pumice during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD.
Jeez.
Yep, 13 to 20 feet, just depending upon where you were.
There were people covered, some with like there was a pet as well. I think I've seen. They've uncovered fancy jewelry. I mean, the intricate work that these people did back then. I'm constantly amazed. Number one, it's very difficult to get your timeline right. It's hard enough to get the American timeline right of our history.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to get that. It's hard enough to get that timeline, memorized, let's say, let alone spanning, freaking 2,000 years.
Exactly. Well, how we got on that, I don't know, but you had a point. You had a story you were going to tell.
Oh, yeah. So I don't even know how we got into that, but I just wanted to share this with you. So, doing my family history, there's so many stories that occur, and I found this one very fascinating. This guy would be a first cousin 3 times removed from me, albeit third cousin 3 times removed means 3 generations back, but on the first cousin level to me. So pretty much as close as you can be considering the passage of time. So this guy was born in like around 1867, 68, 69 in Spain. And he ends up traveling his name was Severiano Escagedo Cacho. So that's the name. Very difficult to pronounce, but that's his name, Severiano, let's say. And at an early age, he traveled from Spain to Cuba, which was a colony of Spain. And he was living in a place along the coast, close to a beach that's very famous called Varadero. And Varadero is this long sort of like extension of elevated ground that goes out into the ocean. And people have cabanas there and this and that. And the sands are like crystal-like, transparent. You could see you could go out and out, and it's just like a very calm sort of beach, due to how it is and in the Caribbean or whatever. But close to that city is this place called Cardenas, and he would work there and live there back in the 1800s. And which, by the way, was incredible on its own, because I didn't know that any Escajedos went there to the Americas until like the late 1800s, turn of the century. That's what I thought. But no, there's a long tradition, particularly with this. So Severiano goes to work there, and he begins to, with a friend of his, he purchases or builds, I don't know the story detail of that, money making equipment, fake,
counterfeiting.
Counterfeiting. And he begins to produce counterfeiting coins in his room that he rents out, and that other people live there.
Oh, geez.
The police are made aware of it, and they go to the house which was located. I even know where it's located. In between, so it was located on Velasquez Street in Cardenas, between said street and said street. So I don't know I'd have to go check, but they give you even the coordinates of the darn thing. They go there, they get in, and they find Severiano. Remember, this is my first cousin, 3 times removed. They find Severiano in a room with equipment all over him for faking money and holding some. And they arrest him. And soon thereafter, his friend that's involved in it, that lives there as well, comes in with money, fake money, in his pockets, and they arrest him. And they were gold and silver coins that they were minting, or I'm sorry, fake gold and silver coins that they were minting in that house. And so by I guess it would be 90 something, when that was happening, they take them to court in front of the royal court and all that, the representative of Spain in Cuba. And they sentenced him to 10 years and 1 day, and with X amount of pay that he had to pay back, and this and that. And likewise, his buddy, and there was a third guy involved in this and that. And that all happened on the coast. They send him off to jail. We don't hear about him until 1907. And all of a sudden, in 1907, which was like 3 years after he was released, within the math, he opens up a business, and he's into making equipment for horse riding. Everything you could imagine, saddles for horses. He's in business with another guy doing that. So it looks like he went through that bad spell, and then all of a sudden, Severiano had this business with this other guy. But in 1907 through to 1908, his partner dies. And you could see the writing, because he calls his heirs, the heirs of the partner, so they can settle that business of his. Right. And I guess he would have taken over the business or shared in the wealth of it. I don't know what the case. And so he does that. Then a few years later, in 1921, he comes out with a patent. He patented something about his business, which were, those leggings that are worn to protect yourself out, on the prairie and all that. They were like from the knee down type deal.
Okay.
So it was a specific thing for, I don't know what purpose, but he's got a patent for it. And he was displaying it at some sort of fair for patents and such, and this and that. So there's that. And that was in like 1923, 1920 something. And then come 1930 something, there's one final entry for Severiano. So Severiano Escagedo Cacho, at the age of about 70, was found in his Havana, and the name of it, Dolores 333, was his house in Havana, Cuba, where he was found hanged by a rope in his house at the age of 70. And the authorities came in, and he had left a note. Mm-hmm. And in the note it said, This is to let you know, the authorities and my family, the court and my family, which is an interesting thing. He wrote it so that they wouldn't think it was foul play and his family would get what they
Mhm.
were. So probably something to that effect. I'm just here to let you know, for you, for the courts, and for my family, that this is a decision I take. And look what he said, because I am in pain and I am sick and tired of life. And that was the last.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the key here is I discovered in research all that. And it's packaged nicely now, but these were scatterings.
Yeah. Just stuff that you had picked up from all over the place and coalesced together.
Sticking my nose everywhere, anywhere I could go and find.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So yeah, I just wanted to share that. I thought it was cool.
And people don't think they have a story, man. And people think they don't have a story.
Yeah, there's a lot of, everybody's got a story, you know.
Oh,
So
yeah. Definitely. Everybody has a story.
what's more poignant about it, though, and about this work that I've been doing, since we're ending up the thing, is that in doing this, one, I'm educating myself to a whole history that, on one level, it's a new discovery of stories but it's lives of real people. And then there's the added thing that, and I'm related to them, so there's that, added
Yeah.
thing. But they're real life stories, and you're bringing it out of obscurity, because if
Right.
nobody checks, there's really nobody's gonna, because I mean, there's so many
Well-
people that have been born and passed away, but someone took interest and they brought this history out. And so I kind of, it's investigative, and it's interesting.
Well, do you think your dad even knew that story?
No, nobody knew that story.
Do you think he even knew he had a cousin that had, that far back?
No, well, of course he would
Because
know
he'd have
that.
been twice removed. It would have been his, it would have been 2 generations back from him. That would have been his
Cousin
grandfather's. Yeah.
First cousin twice removed.
Yeah.
Okay,
That would have,
I'll tell you what the relation.
that would have been his, of his grandfather's generation, that cousin.
No, it would be before. It would be of his. Yes, you're right. Yes, it would be of his grandfather's, because I was thinking my grandfather. It would be of his grandfather's generation. But the problem is, back then,
Uh-huh.
there were plenty of Escagedos, but they were all in Spain, but not all. See, here's the catch to that. I think what happened was this. This is what I think happened. So when Spain controlled Cuba, because Cuba was the last colony
Mhm.
that they lost.
Yeah.
They lost everything. They lost Peru. They lost Mexico early on, and they lost down the line everything. But Cuba, they wanted to hold on to. They wanted to hold on to because Cuba is large, the largest of the Caribbean islands. It's a mecca for shipment and this and that, or at least it was. It still is, but in one direction. And so they wanted to hold on to that, but then the war came. The Americans come in, and in that battle, and in that, you had the birth of people that were descended from Spaniards that stayed, but you had people that were descendants, or you had people that were Spaniards that fought to keep. So you had two. It's kind of like a civil war in a way. You had people that were the descendants of, maybe one generation off, maybe sometimes 10 generations off. You had a whole slew of that, and they lost the island. And the Americans, was it Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders and such?
Yeah, that was during that. Yeah.
So all that happened. So they lost their. So a lot of these people, these Spaniards that had businesses, lost it, and they just went back to Spain. And so Cuba, after the fact, people started coming back again, and that's when my family
Okay.
came
Mhm.
after that,
Okay.
but there were people there, family
Right.
members there prior, which is a new discovery for me. So that all was a cool thing.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Wow.
I
Wow.
just, it's been a fascinating ride.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it.
But in any event, I think that we're at the mark. We're at the 105. So let's just do this. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We do want to mention that, well, apart from the website that we mentioned earlier, we also have the Facebook page. And Mark and I usually post things that we talk about here and enjoy. So we'll post it there so folks can check it out. And we're always on every Tuesday. Well, almost always, kind of like 90%. We're hitting 98% on Tuesdays at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific time here on YouTube. Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube. We have a show that comes out audio-wise podcast on Tuesdays as well, early in the morning, and you can catch all that each week. And we're also sponsored by
Harneal Media. Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media, webmaster to the stars. Everybody rich and famous is trying to get on board with Steve, and I don't blame him a bit. He's the man. He will get you taken care of, whether you're looking for a website, a web store, merch design. He's your fella. He can get you taken care of at real reasonable prices. So that's Steve Nealon at Harneal Media. Check him out.
All right, so we'll catch you guys next time. Have a great week.
See ya. And clean break. Okay. All right, let's dive into this. Miter Mike checked in here and was like, who's this Hendrix guy they're talking about? Cream? Yes, and sugar in my coffee. Dude, you ain't funny. 10,000 comedians out of work, and he's over here trying to do stand-up.
Well, I remember when I first met Miter Mike, or one of those times, we were talking, and I mentioned something about the Beatles, this or that. I don't remember detailed exactly, but he said the who, Beatles, what? He was his response was like he asked a question, but it seemed almost impossible that he wouldn't know that. Who wouldn't know the answer to that? That's like the biggest revolution since the beginning of music. And I was shocked to find that he, honest to goodness, he wasn't, he was, I think he said he was into country music.
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, what the heck? Why not?
Yeah, I think that was the case.
There are a lot of folks who are seriously hot and heavy into country music that just have no clue about anybody rock and roll. Nobody.
No, but that's what I was going to say. Like, we don't, our world is involved in the things that we share.
Sure.
Like, we can talk on that level because it's kind of like we share that experience in our different ways, but we have that common thread with the certain bands.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily translate to everyone across the board.
Right. Exactly. Just because we, like this or don't like that or something else doesn't mean that there isn't somebody else there.
Yeah.
So yeah, serious business. It's no doubt at all. So, there's loads of people that have never really listened to the Beatles. They might know who the Beatles are, but they just don't listen to them. So
yeah.
In fact, that's one of Linda's favorite little things to in talking smack is everybody says, well, yeah, wow, she's a bagpiper. They say, oh, wow, I love the bagpipes. And she'll be like, really? Who's your favorite piper? Nobody can name one. So she's over here in the chat going, yeah, well, Stuart Little rocks. Yeah, he's a bagpiper.
Well, I mean, there's also the fame. There's also the hysteria fame. There's certain musicians that are undertone as opposed to, the screaming like a girl, down the hallways.
Beatlemania. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are, and they're both as valid, to enjoy as anything. But I mean, I'm biased. It's the rock and roll is like really good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm
To me too. I mean, I'm right there. I'm right there with you. I'm of that age, you know. I mean, rock and roll came to be in the 50s, and I was born in 61. So rock and roll is only like 4 or 5 years, 6 years older than me.
yeah.
So, I mean, I'm all about it. That's what I was raised on. I was raised listening to Chubby Checker and Fats Domino and Danny and the Juniors, and then the Beach Boys, and then the Beatles, and a whole bunch of the others. Rick French.
Donna, the prima donna.
Oh yeah.
Donna,
Yeah.
the prima donna.
Oh, come on. The prima donna. Oh man, I'm gonna get it wrong. I don't remember. Was that Paul Anka? I don't remember. Was
No.
that it wasn't Neil Sedaka?
I met a
it wasn't.
girl and I'll go.
Yeah. Oh, what the heck was her name? Or his name rather. It wasn't Bobby Vinton. It wasn't. Oh man.
I can't even think of it now.
It wasn't Neil Sedaka.
No, it wasn't. This guy was more like
anyway.
a street tough kind of look, you know.
I'm looking it up.
You're breaking the rule, but whatever.
I'm not.
We can't go on this way without knowing.
Come on. Let's see.
I met a girl an hour ago.
Oh, Dion and the Belmonts.
The Belmonts.
Yep. Dion Barducci. I couldn't think of his name.
I love that song.
Yeah, and Run Around Sue and all the rest of them. Rick French says, here's a bucket list stop for you. You've already done this. The museum at Bethel Woods, the original Woodstock site. It only takes about 90 minutes to see the whole place, but it's worth it. Didn't you do that when you went up to Woodstock?
Well, we didn't go to the town, and it was done at the official town. The official land was not they did not concede that during Woodstock 92 or 94, whatever it was. So they did it in a nearby adjacent place, which was huge. I mean, just huge. And we were bused there from like Raleigh or something like that. We drove to Raleigh and then we were bused. So we were stuck.
Okay.
You know.
So you didn't go to Bethel or anything, or was that museum even open when you went there? I know it was the area on Yasgur's farm where the original concert took place. So
it was great, man. That was a great adventure.
I have not been to that area of New York. Flew over it, but I've never been to that area of New York. But if I ever get back there, that's one of the things I do want to do, is to go see the site, because you got to figure. I was 8 years old when it happened, and my mother was such a prude because the movie was rated R. I didn't get to see it till I was well into my 20s and moved out of the house. But I wore out the soundtrack albums.
That's really cool.
Oh yeah. Is this true, Jim? Eloy, Jim Dockrell says never get into a volume war with a guitar player who owns a Marshall stack.
Well, Marshalls are super loud. There's always going to be volume wars because everybody always pumps their instrument up a tad, then the other guy goes up higher, and all of a sudden then the drummer complains because they're not amplified. And so the war continues. So yeah, it is what it is.
That was one thing about the Who. Pete Townsend once said, we have lead bass, lead drums, lead guitar, and a loud singer.
Yeah.
They was right, man.
To me, I just want to say this one thing. I get the loud this and that, but to me, that's not the right way to do it. For me, the right way to do it is all the instruments are at whatever decent level, so that you can clearly across the board hear everybody balanced. But as kids, we did the pumping of the volume until it became the sonic hodgepodge of horror. and because everybody wanted, and so then it becomes a screeching, guitar strumming, nasty sort of soup,
Yep.
and that's not the way to go. That's not the way to go. And but a lot of kids, that's what they do, and we were no
Well,
different. But it's not the right way to go.
the way I heard it explained once, and I don't remember who was during the interview, but the bassist, John Entwistle for the Who, always complained that Keith Moon was such an animal on the drums that he couldn't hear his bass. So that's where he started turning up the treble and turning up the volume on his bass so he could just hear himself over Keith Moon.
Yeah.
And that made Pete Townsend have to turn it up so that he could be heard over Keith Moon and John Entwistle. And
Yeah.
Roger was just like, I can keep up with all y'all, go for it. So I don't know if they still hold the record or not, but for many, many years, they held the Guinness Book of World Records, the world record for the loudest concert at over 106 decibels. Measured a certain distance away from the.
No, that had to have been beaten by Metallica
by the
a
stage.
long time ago. That had to have been beaten by the heavy metal of the 80s, but
this was in the 70s. This happened, so I don't know. But like I said, it was for many, many, many years. I don't know if it still stands or not, but I do know I did see Ted Nugent on one of the talk shows. I don't remember which one. He was talking about he went all out in an outdoor arena in Kansas, of all places, where he tried to get as much volume as humanly possible and pump out the volume just as loud as it possibly could. And he heard through the grapevine, through his agent and everything after this concert, that farmers 20 miles away were complaining about the noise. And he just kind of leaned back and he says, I was so proud.
Yeah, I'm not one for even, what I wanted I understood, but I didn't get it. But what I wanted was a balance of sound for everybody. But everybody also, there's a thing about covering up their inadequacies. So they pump the volume up to volume overcompensates the skill, and in their minds, and then it becomes that soup. That horrible.
I'm with you, but that's in the mix too. When you're recording, that's all in the mix. But when the Who was doing this was before they were making albums. So
yeah, Metallica. I was gonna say Metallica. I went to one of their concerts. It was probably like 80 something at the end of the 80s, and it was in downtown. And we went on the metro rail, so it was like that train that goes over the. And I'm telling you, we did the concert, and when we stepped out of that auditorium, I couldn't hear anything.
Yeah.
Nobody. It was me.
Yep.
All night long. Me. I went to bed. It was me. In the morning, it was sort of a little bit better, but I was like, damn, that's too much, dude.
Was it an indoor venue or was it
indoor.
An outdoor stadium? It was indoor. Yeah, that's the problem with indoor venues.
Oh my goodness,
that's
dude.
The problem. Because you not only have the sound coming off of the amplifiers blaring at you, but it's echoing around you, bouncing off the walls. I mean, they do what they can for the acoustics of the venue, but it's just you're trapped and you're surrounded.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah. We saw Metallica, it was an outdoor venue. They set up the stage right outside my wife's hangar at the airfield we were stationed at over in Germany. See, Black Crowes, Queensryche, Metallica, and AC/DC was the headliner.
That's a good concert.
Oh, and Motley Crue.
Oh my goodness. Was that Monsters of Rock?
Yeah, that was Monsters of Rock 92, I want to say.
That's insanity.
Yeah, it was. It was a big concert.
I mean, it's almost, it sounds tiring just listening because that's so much heavy metal.
Uh-huh.
That's a lot of heavy metal, dude.
That's a lot of, yeah. And I mean,
That's
it started at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it was over at like 11, something like
yeah,
that.
that's a
You know,
lot of heavy metal, my friend.
right
That's
out on the airfield, man. So, yeah, Rick French is saying, I like the Piper in Portland on the unicycle with flames. If you ever want to start a fight with a Piper, mention him. He's called the Unipiper, and people want him to fall down on his pipes. They're tired of him. And that's the funny thing about it. I mentioned to, and this happens all the time. I mentioned to somebody that Linda plays bagpipes, and suddenly everybody that sees a video of a bagpiper involved in anything has to send it to me. Or they see anything to do with a kilt, they have to send it to me. And it's like, dude, this is 11 years old and I've seen it 2,000 times. Don't send me stuff about bagpipes or kilts or pipers, please. You know, I've seen them. Believe me, there's nothing new. I've seen them. So
that's funny.
Oh man. But it's it's all good. But believe me, we've seen it.
Let me just share one more thing with you. I mean, we might as well just. Have you ever seen? I'm sure you have, and you guys out there, it's called the 1,000-Year Egg.
The 1,000-year-old egg, yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen videos of people eating that?
Yeah, I've never had one myself, but yeah.
But you've seen videos of like the challenge, the 1,000-year-old challenge. You've seen those?
I've not seen the challenge. No, I didn't know there was a challenge about it.
So there's this one video I came across, and so they bought it from China or wherever. They come in these boxes and they're all cellophaned and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And so and they're two big, tough, muscular, guys. Like these are serious guys, and we weight lift, and their whole shtick is they try crazy things. And so they open up they bought two, and the one guy's like, why'd you buy two? You think we're gonna have a whole dinner of these things? You could have bought one box and we would have been fine, because they come like with 6 in them. And he unwraps it and he says, wait a second, are these maggots in here? And he showed the box inside, and it had live maggots wandering around. This is something they're gonna eat, and they crack it open, and it's this gelatin-like black, disgusting thing. One of them had a bird developing in it and stuff. And it's like it's from the beginning of that video to the end, it's a disaster, dude. And most of the video they're saying it smells bad. So they're like 15 minutes. Oh, what does that smell like? Oh, it smells bad. Wait, and they keep smelling it. Oh my goodness, it's horrible. And I'm just pissing my pants throughout this whole. It's such a great video, and eventually they do eat it. And they start hurling, dude.
That's nothing I want to see.
It's so good. It's so funny that I totally recommend it.
Oh no, I don't know about. See, I'm not much. I don't do the disgusting humor type of a thing. I've heard of 1,000-year-old eggs, and what I gather, it was now this is key. You have to have this prepared beforehand. They take like a clay type of mud, and they mix a bunch of different herbs and spices in it and seasonings and all this other kind of stuff. And you have to time it right, because you have to get the egg just as it's laid by the chicken, because the shell is still soft.
Okay.
And I mean, so soft to the point where you could put a thumbprint in it, or a fingerprint in it. And they put it in this clay, and then they, wrap it up. And it's raw. We're talking fresh out the chicken, and then they just put it away.
It's disgusting. It looks disgusting. It's like a green-black color.
Yeah, and it turns about 52 different colors. Yeah.
And they say it smells like well, I was about to say it.
Yeah. But
it smells bad.
People have been eating them forever.
Not in these neck of the woods. But it is a culinary.
Yeah, it's a thing. Now, I'm adventurous when it comes to food, but there are some things that I just like, nah. You know what? And see, that's one of my new dividing lines. I'm pretty adventurous, but if there's a challenge involved in it, like the 1,000-year-old egg challenge, I don't want nothing to do with it. No thanks. If you have to be challenged to eat it, then no thanks. I'm not interested. It's kind of like the hot chili challenges or all the other kind of stuff. I'm not interested in that stuff.
You know
I
what's
really have no interest in it.
okay? So those one-off challenges is one thing, and I'm not interested either. Although I will watch the one in out of a dozen. I will watch one video of it because it's just funny seeing people try. But Mark, the one thing I do find that's horrible is when people sit at the table and do the eating challenge where they try to eat as much as they can. It is so horrible in my opinion.
I'm not much for gluttony either.
It's too much. It's too much. With all the hot dogs, like they down. I don't even. To me, it's so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah, I don't watch any of those competitive eating things either. It's just it's not for me. Not
it's
my
horrible.
Yeah, I'm not interested at all. You know, put something else on the TV, man. Change the channel. I'm not interested in that crap.
Yeah.
You know, now you put me down at a table with a platter full of barbecued ribs and no time limit, and I'm a happy guy. I will sit there and eat those things until I can eat no more. You know, that's me. You know, there are certain foods that are that way. You put a turkey in front of me, a ham in front of me, corned beef, pastrami, barbecued ribs, and I will sit there and eat on that forever. I just keep going.
I'm partial to the corned beef and the ribs. The chicken's fine, but if I had a choice between chicken and ribs, I'd pretty much always pick ribs.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Given a choice of those things, you're absolutely right. But I mean, I'm talking about just put any of them in front of me like that, and I'll sit and eat. I'll just go.
Yeah. So
okay, I just posted that Hendrix clip over on the Trampled Underfoot Podcast Facebook page, so it is there now. I just put it there. So that's why seemed to be like I wasn't paying attention to you. I was paying attention to you. I was just trying to get it put up over there so that folks could see what we were talking about.
And likewise, I type in or drop in the Trampled, the video that I had the music video that I had mentioned, which is kind of an Easter egg within an Easter egg because nobody's going to know why I posted that video unless they watch the.
They have to, if they watch the podcast or if they've listened to the audio podcast, we have told everybody that that's where it's going to be. So, and we do that all the time, y'all. If we talk about something, we've had a big discussion and we're trying to describe something, we'll post it over there on our Facebook page so you can see it for yourself.
All right. You ready to?
Yeah, we need to go ahead and close up shop. It's almost 8 o'clock here, which means it's 11 o'clock back there. Folks are starting to nod off. So I'd like to thank Rick and Linda and Steve and Jim Dockerel and even Miter Mike and Frankie CNC and Woodworking and who else came in. Workshop. Well, he kind of made an appearance and dissed my dog. He said, for some reason, every Kid Rock song I can think of is actually a Bon Jovi song. Well, there's some truth to that. So, okay. Well, yeah, we'll go ahead. We'll wrap it up. Call it a day. And okay, Rick, before we split, who outlasted what? Did the growler run out before we did, or did we run out of gas before the growler did? Just, inquiring minds want to know. He always fills up a growler full of beer to sit down and check out the podcast. I'm just wondering which one gave out first.
Well, it's a win-win either way.
Yeah, well, there is that. So he says he refilled it. Oh, geez, that's cheating, man. All right, well, that gives you something to drink while you're watching the 11 o'clock news. So I guess we'll catch you all next week. Steve says, I never thought about drinking to watch the show. Oh, bullshit. We know you have.
it might. Wait a second. That's not. I don't want. Look, we're not encouraging such be it, but that might not be. That might make the podcast even more, entertaining. I've not thought. Yeah. All right.
Maybe. Well, you know what? This is inside baseball, but as a kind of a side on a programming note, maybe we ought to have the drinking word of the day, and every time we say it, you got to take a swig. Maybe we ought to do that. Introduce the drinking word of the day at the beginning of the podcast. And
can we use a like? Can it be a little phrase?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. It could be a word, a phrase, whatever.
1,000-year egg. We have to find a way to fit 1,000-year egg into whatever sentence and conversation we're having. That's going to be hard. But we'd have to.
Well, but see, that's why I think it should be a different one every week. That keeps us on our toes. And it keeps them on their toes.
If we remember it, to pick one.
You and I talk about it before we push the button. And
we've been pretty good, though. If you think about it, for a while, but not really. We kind of, it's kind of cheating, because you at one point brought up the idea. Well, look, at the hour mark, I'm going to bring in this clock, and we're going to go ahead, and at the hour mark, we're gonna end the show, so we know that we have a time frame there, and this clock's going to help us. And sure enough, we did that, and sure enough, and then the clock broke, right? But we've been good, right, at stopping at the hour mark ever since the clock was symbolic in us, remembering. At least for me, it helped, because we would just go on. But the funny thing is, it's kind of cheating, because even though we stopped the show, we're kind of continuing on the show. So it's at the end of the day,
we are doing the same thing, but I look at it different, because we're involving the people in the chat, because the people in the chat want to be a part of the show too.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, and they comment the whole time along. And I mean, there's some good stuff in there to talk about, like the museum in Bethel, New York, for the original Woodstock site. I mean, that brought out another story. And, that I think that's great. I think it's perfect. So, we do the audio side, and then we stop, and then we hoot and holler with the folks over here in the chat and get more stories out and everything. I love it.
Well, I think it's a winning system thus far.
Yeah, whether they love it or not is another subject. I mean, Jim had to split, so and Jim Dockrell outlasts everybody, everybody. So,
well, I mean, we do what we can, and we all have things that we might have to do, and such is life. But anyways, I think it's time to land the plane.
Okay.
You guys enjoy the rest of your week. Have a good week, and just enjoy life. And we'll catch you next time.
See you next week. Have a good one. Take care.
Later.